Chapter 1: The Stale Marriage. The morning sun filtered through the pale gray curtains, casting soft light over the perfectly arranged bedroom. Emily Hayes lay on her side, eyes open, staring at the edge of the bed. Her husband, Mark, had already left. The faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air, a scent that used to make her heart flutter, but now barely registered. Their house in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, was everything she dreamed of once. 2 stories, white shutters, a porch swing. The neighbors smiled, and the lawns were neatly trimmed. To outsiders, it looked like the picture of success. Inside, it felt like a well-decorated prison. Emily sat up, brushing a loose strand of honey blonde hair behind her ear. Her eyes drifted to the digital clock on the nightstand, 7:42 a.m. She had no real reason to rush. Her freelance editing work didn't begin until mid-morning, and truthfully, there wasn't much to edit lately. Most of her clients had either gone quiet or found someone cheaper on Fiverr. She patted down the hallway, the wood floors cold beneath her feet. The kitchen was clean. Mark always cleaned up after himself, but sterile. The toaster gleamed. The granite countertops were spotless. It looked more like a showroom than a space for real life. A yellow post-it note stuck to the fridge. Meeting at 9. Didn't want to wake you. Have a good day. No. Love you? Not even a call me later. Just the kind of dry, distant note you'd leave a roommate. Emily made a cup of coffee and stared out the kitchen window at the backyard. The leaves on the maple tree had begun to turn, painting a fiery canvas of red and gold. Autumn was always her favorite season. There was something beautiful about change, about letting things fall away so new ones could grow. She hadn't felt change in years. Not since she married Mark. They had met during a corporate training seminar 7 years ago in Charlotte. Emily had been working as a marketing assistant at a small ad agency, ambitious and eager to prove herself. Mark was a rising star in finance, polished, confident, magnetic. He said all the right things. He made her feel seen. Their whirlwind romance led to a wedding just 11 months later. Now, 5 years into marriage, Emily felt invisible. The intimacy had vanished. Conversations were transactional. Sex had become an obligation, if it happened at all. They rarely laughed anymore, and when they did, it felt forced, like actors pretending for an audience. She sipped her coffee and leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. Social media was worse than usual. Friends posted smiling family photos, anniversary dinners, or new baby announcements. Each image made her feel like she was standing on the outside of a glass house, looking in. She opened her email, scanning for work. A couple of newsletter clients had sent revisions, but nothing urgent. She closed the laptop and wandered to the living room, curling up on the gray sectional couch. The silence in the house was oppressive. She missed noise. Not just sound, but energy, conversation, laughter, music, late-night debates over red wine. Her world had shrunk to a quiet kitchen, a lonely bedroom, and a marriage built on routine instead of love. Around noon, her phone buzzed. A message from her old friend, Jen. "Hey! Want to come with me to the community leadership mixer tonight? Boring, I know, but free wine and small talk?" Emily smiled faintly. Jen always tried to get her out of the house, bless her heart. "Sure. Why not? Need to find my lipstick." That night, Emily stood in front of her full-length mirror, smoothing her black dress. It wasn't revealing, but it hugged her curves just enough to make her feel feminine again. She hadn't worn heels in months, and as she slipped into a pair of modest pumps, she caught herself tilting her head, checking if her hair looked better parted on the left. The venue was a local civic center, neutral walls, corporate banners, and a bar tucked in the corner offering 2 drink options, cheap wine or cheaper wine. Jen was already there, chatting with a group of school board members. Emily floated through small talk, smiling politely, nodding at mentions of funding issues, local taxes, and upcoming elections. She wasn't really listening. Then, just past the doorway, she saw him. Daniel Walker. Her old boss. He stood near the back, a glass of red wine in hand, listening intently to someone she didn't recognize. He hadn't changed much. Maybe a few more gray strands at his temples, but otherwise the same, tall, broad-shouldered, with the calm authority of someone who knew his worth. Daniel had been her creative director during her time at Morrison & Company. He had pushed her, mentored her, challenged her to think bigger. But more than that, he had made her feel capable. Like she mattered. Their relationship had always been professional, but the connection between them had been impossible to ignore. It was more than attraction, it was respect, curiosity, alignment. She'd often wondered what would have happened if she hadn't left the agency when she got married. As if sensing her thoughts, Daniel turned, and their eyes met. His face lit up. "Emily?" he said, striding over. "Emily Hayes, God, it's been what, 5 years?" "Daniel Walker." She smiled, her heart skipping a beat. "You still remember me? How could I forget? You were one of the smartest people I ever worked with. You look amazing." Emily felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. She laughed, touching his arm lightly. "I didn't know you were involved in local politics." "Just volunteering," he said. "Helping with campaign strategies. Still can't resist a good pitch." They caught up quickly, his consulting business, her freelance work, people they both used to know. With each word, the familiarity returned, like slipping into a favorite sweater. She remembered the way he listened, really listened. He asked questions. He made eye contact. He didn't scroll through his phone or check his watch. And when he smiled at her, it reached his eyes. They talked for nearly an hour, even as the event died down and people began to leave. "I should get going," Emily finally said, glancing at the time. "Mark will wonder where I am." Daniel's expression shifted slightly, just a flicker, but she saw it. "Right. Of course. It was great seeing you again." "You too," she said softly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "If you ever want to catch up properly, coffee, lunch, whatever, give me a call." Emily took the card. His handwriting was still bold and neat. She didn't promise anything. But as she slipped the card into her purse and walked to her car, she realized something that made her stomach twist in both excitement and guilt. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt alive. Chapter 2: A Glimpse from the Past. Emily couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her fingers brushing against the edge of the comforter, while Mark snored softly beside her. His back was turned, like always. There was a time when they would fall asleep tangled together, legs overlapping, whispering about their future. Now there was a gap between them. A physical space that mirrored the emotional chasm she no longer knew how to cross. Her mind kept replaying the way Daniel looked at her. Not like a stranger. Not like a husband who had long stopped seeing. But like a man who remembered something about her she had almost forgotten herself. Worth. It wasn't the flirty smile that stuck with her the most, it was the way he said her name. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. Emily rolled over and stared at the faint blue light of her phone on the nightstand. It was almost 2 a.m. She resisted the urge to text him. What would she even say? Instead, she slid quietly out of bed and padded down the hallway to the kitchen, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. The tile floor was cold. The silence again too loud. She opened her purse, pulled out Daniel's card, and turned it over in her hand. Daniel Walker. Strategic Marketing Consultant. Private Cell, *******. She ran her thumb over the numbers and finally placed it back in the drawer. Not yet. The next morning, Mark was already in his home office by the time she got up. She made her usual quiet cup of coffee, skipping breakfast. She didn't feel hungry, she felt restless. Her mind was a whirl of contradiction. She was married. She loved Mark, didn't she? Or maybe she loved who he used to be. Or who she used to be when they first met. She took her laptop to the patio, ignoring the to-do list in her planner. The sun was warm on her skin. The birds chirped, the air smelled like damp leaves. But inside she was storming. Finally, she opened her email app and drafted a short message. Subject: coffee? Hi Daniel. It was really good seeing you the other night. I'd love to catch up sometime, maybe coffee later this week? Let me know what your schedule looks like. Emily. She stared at it for a minute. Then clicked send. Daniel replied within 2 hours. Absolutely. How about Thursday, 11 a.m.? That place on Main, Crescent Cafe? Her heart thumped in response as she typed. Perfect. See you there. Thursday. Emily stood in front of her closet for too long that morning. Everything felt either too formal or too casual. Too boring or too trying. She finally settled on a soft beige blouse and dark jeans, with simple makeup and a pair of ankle boots. Nothing loud, nothing suggestive. But she still checked her reflection more times than she'd admit. Crescent Cafe was tucked into a quiet block downtown, with warm brick walls, mismatched chairs, and indie music humming overhead. It was a place she used to love when she was still working full-time, before the routine of domestic life swallowed her whole. Daniel was already there, sitting at a small table near the window, reading something on his phone. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled and stood to greet her. Emily, he said, offering a brief but sincere hug. You look happy. She laughed. Do I? I wasn't sure I remembered how. They sat, ordered coffee, hers a vanilla latte, his black, and the conversation flowed easily. It was as if time hadn't passed. Still writing? He asked. Not as much as I'd like. Mostly editing now, freelance. It pays enough. You used to talk about writing your own novel, he said. You had some amazing ideas back then. Emily smiled sadly. Yeah, well, life happened. He nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of his coffee. It usually does. Still doesn't mean the ideas go away. They just wait. The way he said it made her chest ache. Daniel always had this way of cutting through noise, of getting to the heart of a thing without pushing. And you? She asked. You look good. Happier than when I left Morrison. I'm better, he admitted. Leaving the agency gave me freedom. Consulting's been good. More flexible. More balanced. Emily tilted her head. And personal life? Married? He hesitated. Divorced. 2 years now. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said, his tone gentle but sure. It was the right thing. She nodded slowly, not asking for more. And yet something passed between them, unspoken understanding. The quiet knowledge that life doesn't always work the way you plan. They talked for nearly an hour. About books. About cities they'd wanted to visit. About how strange it was that people they once saw every day were now just distant memories. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy, Emily? The question landed like a weight in her stomach. She didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, watching a mother with a toddler walk past, the child laughing wildly at a passing dog. I don't know, she said quietly. Some days I think I am. Others, I feel like I'm just going through the motions. Daniel nodded, not pressing her. Just letting her sit in that truth. I miss feeling seen, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Like I matter. You do, Daniel said simply. That one line. It cracked something open inside her. When they stood to leave, Daniel placed his hand lightly on her arm. Let's do this again sometime. No pressure. Just two old friends catching up. Emily met his eyes and gave a small, grateful smile. Yeah. I'd like that. That night, when Mark came home, he barely looked at her. Dinner was leftovers. They sat across the table, chewing in silence, the only sound the hum of the fridge. How was your day? She asked. Busy. Henderson's report was a mess, he said, eyes on his phone. Yours? She hesitated. I met an old friend for coffee. That's nice. No follow-up. No interest. No curiosity. Just a wall. As she cleaned up, Emily caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. She looked the same. But something had shifted. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel entirely alone. Chapter 3: Old Flames, New Sparks. The following week, Emily tried to bury herself in work. She sat at her desk, sifting through edits for a self-published romance novel that was more cliché than compelling, but her mind kept drifting. To Daniel. To the way he listened. The way his eyes didn't flick to his phone mid-conversation. The way he remembered the things she used to dream about, before those dreams turned into dust under dinner plates and monthly budgets. Mark didn't mention her outing with Daniel. He didn't ask who the friend was or seem to care much. That, somehow, made it worse than if he'd shown jealousy. At least jealousy would have meant something. By Wednesday, Daniel messaged again. Daniel. Just wanted to say I enjoyed catching up. If you ever want to grab lunch or walk through that sculpture park you used to rave about, I'm in. No pressure. Emily stared at her screen for a moment, then typed. Emily. I'd really like that. The park sounds perfect. They met 2 days later, just after lunch. The weather was warm for early fall, with a crisp breeze threading through the trees. Emily wore a simple navy sweater and jeans. No makeup this time. She didn't feel like she needed it around him. Daniel was already waiting by the entrance to the sculpture park, leaning against the railing, hands in his pockets. I was starting to think you'd ghosted me, he teased gently as she approached. I thought about it, she joked, but I didn't want to miss your hot takes on abstract art. He laughed, and they began walking slowly down the gravel path. The park was nearly empty, the occasional jogger or couple passing by. Giant steel structures curved over patches of grass, and modern stone towers rose like forgotten monuments. They paused in front of a massive circular installation, a ring of twisted iron with a single red flame carved into its center. I always loved this one, Emily said. It's like, no matter how chaotic everything looks, there's still something burning in the middle. Daniel looked at her, not the sculpture. You always saw things differently. They kept walking, conversation soft and meandering, music, politics, books. Every topic seemed to carry more weight when it came from him. At one point, Emily hesitated, then asked, What happened with your marriage? Daniel sighed, hands deep in his coat pockets. We grew apart. I wanted one kind of life. She wanted another. We didn't talk about it. We just lived beside each other for too long, pretending it was fine. Emily nodded slowly. That sounds familiar. Are you okay? He asked. She took a moment. I don't know anymore. I keep thinking this is just what marriage becomes. Boring. Cold. Predictable. But then I remember how it used to feel, and I wonder if I'm fooling myself thinking it could come back. Daniel didn't speak immediately. Instead, he looked at her with a kind of quiet intensity. Sometimes, he said finally, what we want isn't to go back. It's to move forward, towards something honest. Even if it's hard. They sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. Ducks drifted across the surface, oblivious to the questions weighing down the humans watching them. Emily turned slightly toward him. You ever wonder how things might have been if we'd stayed in touch? He gave a half-smile. More than once. She felt it then, that invisible thread between them tightening. She knew she should pull away. Redirect. Mention Mark. Say something safe. Instead, she let the moment breathe. Daniel reached out and touched her hand, gently, just a brush of fingers over hers. But it was enough. Enough to wake something in her that had been sleeping for years. Enough to scare her. I should go, she said suddenly, standing up. Daniel nodded, standing with her. Of course. But as she turned to leave, he said, Emily, this doesn't have to mean anything you don't want it to. But I won't lie and pretend I don't feel it. She looked at him, really looked. I feel it too, she whispered. Then she turned and walked away. That night, Mark worked late again. Emily sat on the couch, watching a TV show she wasn't following, wine glass in hand, phone dark beside her. Her heart pounded, but not because of anything on screen. It was the memory of Daniel's voice. The way his fingers felt against hers. The fire inside the sculpture. The fire inside her. Mark came in around 10:30 p.m. and barely said hello. He poured himself a drink and went straight to the bedroom. "You okay?" she called softly. "Just tired," he replied. Emily wanted to say more. "Ask me about my day. Sit with me. Look at me." But she said nothing. And he didn't come back out. She sat there a long time after, staring at her reflection in the dark TV screen, wondering when she'd become a stranger in her own life. Chapter 4: Emotional Drift. Emily had never been the kind of woman who kept secrets. But for the first time in her life, she was living a double life, not the dramatic, scandalous kind from a movie, but the quiet, aching kind. The kind made up of carefully worded texts, moments of hesitation before answering simple questions, and a phone that she now kept face down when she wasn't using it. She hadn't slept with Daniel. Not yet. But she'd crossed a line, and she knew it. Not just with him, but within herself. Something had shifted. A slow, almost imperceptible tilt that had her sliding away from Mark with every passing day. It started with small things. She no longer waited up for Mark if he worked late. She stopped cooking dinner and started eating alone on the patio, watching the sky change color as the sun sank behind the trees. She bought a new journal and began writing again, fragments of thoughts, dialogue, old ideas from when she once dreamed of being a novelist. Daniel had stirred that part of her. The part that remembered who she used to be before she became his wife. Mark noticed, but not in the way she needed him to. One evening over dinner, "Take out again," he asked. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" Emily looked at him. His expression was neutral. Not worried, not curious. Just vaguely polite. "Yeah," she said. "Just work stuff. Anything I can help with?" She hesitated. "I don't know. When's the last time we talked about anything real, Mark?" He blinked, surprised. "What does that mean?" "I mean us. Our life. How we're actually doing." He leaned back, clearly caught off guard. "We're fine, aren't we? You're not happy?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "Are you?" He shrugged. "I mean, yeah, I guess. We don't fight. We have a nice house. We're comfortable. That's not the same thing as being happy." His silence said more than any answer could. She sighed and stood up, carrying her plate to the sink. "I'm not trying to start something," she said. "I just feel like we're living beside each other. Not with each other." "I work hard, Emily," he said quietly. "You know that. I'm not asking you to work less. I'm asking you to see me." Later that night, she sat in bed reading while Mark scrolled through his phone. No conversation. No touch. The space between them felt colder than usual. She turned off her light, rolled to her side, and stared out the window. In the darkness, her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. One new message. "Daniel. I passed by that little bookstore near Glen Street. The one you used to love. They've still got that same crooked poetry shelf. I thought of you." She read the message twice, then smiled, her thumb hovering over the screen. "Emily. I haven't been there in years. Maybe we should go. I'll show you my favorite bad poems. Daniel." You named the day. The next afternoon, they met at the bookstore. It was a quiet, quirky little place nestled between a thrift shop and a bakery. Emily walked in first, greeted by the familiar scent of old paper and wooden floors that creaked underfoot. Daniel was already flipping through a photography book near the entrance. "There she is," he said, smiling when he saw her. "Queen of obscure fiction and sarcasm." Emily laughed. "Careful. I'll make you read a 600-page novel about loneliness and French architecture. They wandered the aisles like they had 1,000 times before, though never like this. There was an ease between them, but also a charge. Like standing too close to a fire, knowing the heat could burn but not wanting to step away. They sat on a bench near the back, flipping through a poetry collection neither of them had heard of. The verses were awkward and overdone, but somehow endearing. This one reads like it was written by a man having a midlife crisis over a latte, Daniel said, laughing. Emily grinned. I love it. It's awful. As their laughter died down, Daniel turned toward her. You seem lighter today, he said softly. I think I just needed to feel like myself again. He studied her face for a moment, then reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I wish you knew how beautiful you are when you're like this. Emily's breath caught. She looked away, her heart pounding. Daniel. I know, he said. You're married. I'm not trying to complicate things. But they're already complicated. He leaned back slightly, giving her space. I'm not here to ruin anything, Emily. But I won't pretend I don't care about you. Or that I'm not drawn to you. I always was. She looked at him, her eyes wet but unreadable. I just don't know who I am anymore. She whispered. You're still in there, he said. You just need someone to remind you. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The silence between them was louder than words. That evening, Mark came home late again. Emily didn't wait up. When he climbed into bed beside her, he mumbled something about a long meeting and closed his eyes. She stared at the ceiling, her chest tight. Her mind was no longer asking if she was falling for Daniel. It was asking what came next. Chapter 5: The First Betrayal. It was raining the night it happened. A slow, steady drizzle that wrapped the world in quiet. The streetlights outside cast blurred halos onto the pavement. Emily sat in her parked car outside Daniel's condo, hands clenched on the steering wheel, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the patter of rain. She hadn't planned on coming here. Not really. It started with an argument. The worst one in months. Mark had come home later than usual. Emily had waited with a warm dinner, an effort she hadn't made in a while. But by the time he walked through the door, the food was cold, and her mood was colder. You couldn't text? She asked, arms folded. Mark blinked at her, unbothered. I got caught in a meeting. I'm sorry, okay? That's not the point, Mark. The point is you didn't even think to tell me. You just assume I'll wait. Like I'm part of the furniture. He dropped his briefcase by the door and ran a hand through his damp hair. Jesus, Emily. It's one night. Why are you acting like this? Because I feel like I don't exist to you anymore. She snapped. You come home, we eat in silence, we sleep back to back, and you don't even see me. Do you even care that I'm miserable? He stared at her for a long moment, then spoke carefully. I think you're unhappy with yourself. And I think you're blaming me because it's easier than admitting that. Her mouth opened, then closed. The slap of that sentence echoed through the room. She didn't say another word. She just grabbed her coat and walked out into the rain. And now here she was, staring up at Daniel's building, hands trembling. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. You okay? She didn't respond. She just got out of the car and walked toward the door. When he opened it, Daniel looked surprised, but only for a second. Then concern took over. Emily? What happened? She stepped inside, soaked and shivering. I didn't know where else to go. He didn't ask questions. He just pulled her in and held her. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was grounding. Safe. Human. Do you want to talk about it? He asked after a while. She shook her head. Not now. Okay. He made her tea. Gave her a dry shirt. Lit a candle on the coffee table and put on soft jazz like it was second nature. The apartment was warm, masculine, filled with books and photography prints and a half-written manuscript on the desk in the corner. It felt alive. unlike her house. She sat on the couch wrapped in one of his hoodies, her knees pulled up, watching the candle flicker. "You were always the one who made me feel like I mattered," she said quietly. Daniel turned from the kitchen. "You do matter." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "I don't feel guilty for being here." He didn't say anything. He just walked over and sat beside her. Close but not touching. "Emily, if you're here to forget your marriage for one night, I won't stop you. But I won't be your escape either." She looked at him, into him, and shook her head. "I'm not here to escape. I'm here because I can't pretend anymore." Then she leaned in and kissed him. It started slow, uncertain, tender. But it deepened quickly, years of tension rising to the surface. His hands cupped her face, her fingers curled into his shirt. The kiss said everything they'd left unsaid for weeks, months, years. She broke the kiss first, breathless. "I should go." "You don't have to," he said, voice low. And she didn't. She stayed. They lay in bed afterward, quiet, tangled in sheets and regret. Daniel reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers. "Are you okay?" Emily stared at the ceiling. "No. But I don't feel numb." "You don't have to figure everything out tonight." "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "Yes, you do. You're waking up." Tears welled in her eyes. "I've never done anything like this before." "I know. I don't want to hurt him." "You already are. Just in a different way." The next morning, Emily stood in front of the bathroom mirror, barefaced, wearing the same hoodie, her hair messy. But for the first time in a long time, her reflection looked like a person. Not a wife. Not a ghost. A person. Daniel came up behind her, his hands on her shoulders. "You can stay as long as you need." She nodded. "I need to go home." "Call me when you get there?" "I will." When she walked back into the house, Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. He looked up. "I was about to call the police." "I'm fine," she said. "You left without saying anything." "So do you," she said, passing him. He stood. "Where were you?" She froze, her hand on the stair railing. "I needed space." "That's not an answer." She turned, met his eyes. "I was with someone." Silence. The kind of silence that changes everything. Mark blinked, trying to process. "What do you mean?" "I was with someone," she repeated. "Someone who made me feel like I wasn't invisible." His face went pale. "You cheated?" "Yes." He stared at her like she was a stranger. Then he turned and walked out the back door without saying a word. Emily stood in the kitchen, shaking. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there. And for once, she didn't feel numb. She felt everything. Chapter 6, Torn in Two. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, the ticking of the wall clock louder than ever before. Mark hadn't returned. He didn't call, didn't text. The silence between them was no longer emotional, it was physical. Real. Empty. She wanted to feel relief. She had said the truth. She had stopped lying. But all she felt was raw. Open. Torn. Downstairs, the house was still. The framed wedding photo on the living room wall stared back at her like a cruel reminder. Two people in love, smiling under sunlight, full of hope. She couldn't even remember what that felt like anymore. In the morning, she brewed coffee and stood in the kitchen as the sun streamed through the windows. Her phone buzzed. "Daniel. I've been thinking about you. I don't know what happened after you left, but I hope you're okay. I'm here when you're ready." Emily held the phone in her hands for a long time before replying. "He knows." The reply came instantly. "Do you want to talk?" "Not yet. Just, thank you for not asking too much. You don't owe me answers. Just your honesty." That line stayed with her the rest of the morning. Mark came home just before noon. He looked exhausted, his face drawn and his eyes bloodshot. Emily stood as he walked through the door, bracing herself. He didn't speak right away. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, took off his jacket, and sat at the kitchen table like it was any normal Tuesday. Emily sat across from him, her chest tight. Finally, he said, "How long has it been going on?" She didn't lie. "It hasn't. Just once. Just once." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "That makes it better?" "No. But it's the truth." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Was it someone I know?" She hesitated. "No. But it's someone I used to work with. Daniel Walker." Mark's eyes flickered. "Recognition, maybe? Or just more pain? Did you plan it? Were you seeing him behind my back before it happened?" She shook her head. "No. It started with a conversation. Then more conversations. He made me feel alive. Like I mattered again." Mark's jaw clenched. "So I didn't? You stopped trying, Mark. You stopped looking at me like I was someone you loved. We've been strangers for a long time, and you know it." He rubbed his face with both hands. "So what now?" "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't have answers yet. But I couldn't keep lying. I couldn't pretend anymore." They sat in silence for a while. Then he stood. "I'm going to stay at my brother's for a few days." "Okay." He walked to the door, then stopped and turned. "I didn't cheat, Emily. I didn't walk away. I didn't quit." Emily blinked back tears. "Maybe that's the problem. Neither of us quit, but neither of us tried either." He didn't reply. He just walked out the door and closed it behind him. The house was quieter than it had ever been. For the rest of the day, Emily drifted from room to room like a ghost. She couldn't eat. Couldn't work. Couldn't focus. She sat on the back porch as the afternoon sun warmed her skin, and she finally let the tears fall. She cried for everything. For the marriage she couldn't fix. For the woman she had become. For the choices she now had to live with. And for the man she had let back into her life, and let into her heart. That evening she called Daniel. "I told him." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Daniel's voice, warm, gentle. "How are you holding up? I feel like I'm unraveling," she said. "Like I tore the fabric of my life and I don't know how to stitch it back together." "You don't have to fix it all at once," he said. "You just have to breathe through it." "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But you're not alone anymore." They stayed on the phone for an hour. She talked. He listened. No pressure. No suggestion. Just support. It was everything she needed. When she finally hung up, she felt lighter, not healed, but less hollow. The next day, she called Jen. "Can I come over?" she asked. Jen's tone was surprised, but kind. "Of course." Over tea on Jen's back porch, Emily confessed everything. The affair. The distance in her marriage. Her confusion. Her guilt. Jen didn't judge her. She just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You didn't do this out of malice. You did it because you were drowning. You reached for the only hand that felt warm. But I still hurt him. Yeah. And maybe that's part of your truth. But it doesn't mean you don't deserve happiness now. You just have to be honest. With him, with Daniel, and most of all, with yourself." That night, Mark texted. "We need to talk this weekend. We need to figure out what this means. For us." Emily stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Yes. We do." But what she didn't say, what she couldn't say yet, was that her heart already knew the answer. It was just waiting for her to catch up. Chapter 7: Crossroads. Saturday came, and with it, a heavy stillness. The air hung thick with unsaid words, and Emily felt her nerves wrapping tighter with each passing hour. Mark arrived around noon, a small overnight bag slung over his shoulder. His face was unreadable, his posture calm but distant. Emily met him at the door, stepping aside wordlessly as he walked in. They sat across from each other in the living room, The same place where years ago they had chosen furniture together, watched movies cuddled under blankets, and laughed over takeout. Now there was only space, physical and emotional, between them. "Thanks for meeting," he began. Emily nodded. "Of course." Mark took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about everything. Trying to separate anger from truth. I've played back the last 2 years of our marriage in my head more times than I can count." She said nothing. There was nothing to interrupt. "I realized something," he continued. "We didn't just drift apart. I pushed you away." Emily blinked. "You didn't." "I did. I stopped seeing you. I buried myself in work. I let our connection fade, and I pretended it wasn't happening. I thought if we kept the routine alive, the marriage would survive on autopilot." Tears stung her eyes. "Mark." He shook his head. "But that doesn't excuse what you did. You lied to me. You crossed the line we said we never would." "I know," she whispered. "I hate that I did." They were both quiet for a while. Then he asked, "Do you love him?" The question felt like a razor, slicing through the air. Emily didn't flinch. "I didn't plan to. I didn't even know I could still feel something that strong. But yes, I think I do." Mark nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting it. "So where does that leave us?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't want to hurt you anymore. But I also don't want to keep pretending. We've been walking parallel for so long, what if we're not meant to cross paths again?" He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, there wasn't coldness in his gaze. Just sadness. Acceptance. Maybe even relief. "I think we both deserve a chance to be whole again," he said. "Even if it's not together." Emily's lip trembled. "Are you saying we should separate?" He nodded once. "Not out of revenge. Not out of anger. But maybe it's the only way for us to stop surviving and actually start living again." She reached for his hand, and he let her hold it. "I never stopped loving the man I married," she said. "But I think we became strangers trying to protect something that already crumbled." Mark's voice cracked. "Maybe in another life, we could have fixed it." "Maybe," she whispered. Later that day, they drafted an agreement, nothing formal yet, just intentions. A mutual decision to separate. No accusations. No lawyers yet. Just two people trying to end something gently, before it poisoned them completely. Emily cried when he left, but not because she regretted the choice. She cried for the history. For the years they built together. For the man who once made her feel like she could fly. The following evening, Emily sat at a quiet corner table in a small Italian restaurant downtown. Daniel arrived right on time. He looked nervous. "I wasn't sure if this would actually happen." Emily smiled softly. "It almost didn't. But I didn't want to keep running from the truth." They ordered wine and shared a basket of bread. Conversation came easy. It always had. Daniel told stories from his travel clients, and laughed about a failed cooking class he'd tried. Emily talked about design, rediscovering creativity, and how silence had become both a friend and a challenge in recent days. Midway through dinner, he reached across the table. "So what now?" he asked. Emily met his gaze. "Now, I heal. I give myself time. But I don't want to shut you out, Daniel. What happened between us wasn't just an escape. It meant something. You mean something." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, whether we're together or not." Her heart swelled. "I'm not ready for all the answers," she said. "But I'm ready for the next step. With honesty. With intention." Daniel smiled. "Then that's enough for me." That night, Emily stood in front of her bedroom mirror. Same woman. New chapter. She didn't feel guilty anymore. She didn't feel like a villain or a victim. She felt human. Flawed, fragile, but finally free. Chapter 8. A New Rhythm. The first morning waking up alone was quiet. Not in a sad way, just still. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. Sunlight filtered through the windows, dancing across the hardwood floor. There was no one snoring beside her. No Mark coming in to ask about breakfast. No buzz of obligation. Just her. For the first time in years, the day was hers entirely. She spent the morning cleaning, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She opened windows, let fresh air fill the space, and put on an old jazz record she used to love. She rearranged pillows, moved a lamp, donated half of the clothes she hadn't worn in a year. It was like shedding a skin she hadn't even realized she'd been wearing. By noon, she was smiling. Not because anything particularly special had happened, but because she felt lighter. That evening, Daniel came by. Not as a secret, not in hiding, just a man visiting a woman he cared about. He brought Thai food and a bottle of red wine. "You look different," he said, setting the bag down. "Different how?" "Free. Like your energy changed." She laughed. "I think it did." They sat on the balcony, watching the city shift from gold to lavender as dusk settled. Traffic buzzed below, but it all felt far away, like they were in their own little corner of the world. Daniel leaned back, sipping his wine. "I've been thinking about us." Emily turned toward him. "I know this isn't the beginning most couples dream of," he continued, "but I don't care about how it started. I care about where it goes." She looked at him for a long time. "You're not afraid of the mess?" He smiled gently. "Everyone's got a mess. I'd rather face it with someone real than chase something fake." Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from something warmer. "I'm not looking to rush into labels," she said carefully. "But I want to explore this. With you. As me. Not the version of me that always prioritized someone else." Daniel reached over and touched her cheek. "That's all I've ever wanted. The real you." The next few weeks became a balancing act. Emily and Mark moved forward with their separation, quietly and respectfully. There were no screaming matches. No dramatic scenes. Just two adults recognizing that love could end gracefully, even if it didn't end the way they'd hoped. Mark moved into a small apartment closer to his office. He started therapy. Even sent Emily a text one afternoon. "I'm proud of you. And I'm working on being proud of myself too." It brought tears to her eyes. She replied, "We may not have lasted, but we mattered." Meanwhile, Emily began rediscovering herself. She started running in the mornings, listening to audiobooks instead of music. She redesigned her office space with bold colors she used to shy away from: burnt orange, emerald green, deep navy. She pitched a bold campaign idea to a difficult client and landed the contract with ease. And on weekends, she and Daniel went on small adventures, hiking trails, trying food trucks, attending art shows. They didn't talk much about the past. Not because they were avoiding it, but because they both understood the past had already taken up enough space. Now was about building something new. One rainy night, Emily lay beside Daniel on her couch, his fingers tracing circles on her arm. She whispered, "Do you ever think this is too fast?" He looked up at her. "Do you feel like it is?" She shook her head. "No. It feels right. But I'm scared of messing it up." He smiled. "Then let's take it one truth at a time." She breathed in, slow and deep. "Okay. One truth? Go on. I haven't felt this scene in years." Daniel leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "Then we're already doing something right." In the quiet that followed, as the rain tapped gently against the windows and the weight of the world softened, Emily closed her eyes. The journey wasn't over. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't lost. She was becoming. Chapter 9: Healing Forward. The chill of fall had settled in. Trees turned amber and scarlet, leaves skipping across sidewalks with every breeze. For Emily, the season felt like a mirror. Something was changing inside her too, shedding old layers one truth at a time. She stood outside her favorite cafe, staring at her phone. On the screen was a message she hadn't expected. Would you meet me for coffee? Just to talk. Mark. Emily took a breath. It had been a month since they last saw each other. Their divorce paperwork was still being finalized, but emotionally, the separation was well underway. Still, something in her stirred, a mix of curiosity, nervousness, and closure. She texted back. Okay. Tomorrow at noon? The next day, she spotted Mark sitting alone by the window. He looked tired, thinner, but calmer. Not the man she had left, but maybe the man he was trying to become. Hi, she said as she slid into the seat across from him. Mark offered a faint smile. Hi. They ordered coffee. Silence stretched between them for a moment. I wasn't sure if you'd come, he admitted. I wasn't sure if I should. He nodded, looking down. I don't blame you. Emily traced her finger along the rim of her cup. Why did you ask me here? Mark sighed. Because I needed to say something I didn't say when it mattered. I think I took you for granted. I thought marriage meant stability, and I confused that with routine. I stopped showing up, Em. She blinked, caught off guard by the honesty. I didn't cheat, he continued. But I was still absent. Cold. I shut you out, and when you needed someone, I wasn't there. Emily looked at him, her voice soft. You weren't the only one who failed. I stopped communicating. I buried how unhappy I was until it exploded. I should have told you long before I met Daniel. He winced slightly but nodded. I hate that it happened the way it did. But I get it. I wasn't making you feel seen. They sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't awkward, it was a shared moment of truth. The kind that didn't need words to carry weight. Mark reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote something in therapy. My counselor said I should share it with you. You don't have to read it now. Emily accepted it carefully, nodding. Thank you? He smiled sadly. I don't think we were meant to be forever. But we were real. She felt her throat tighten. We were. They left the cafe with no promises, no lingering emotions of regret, just mutual respect. Closure didn't always come in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it came in small, honest conversations over coffee. That evening, Emily sat in her apartment, reading Mark's letter. It was raw. Imperfect. But full of accountability. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He offered understanding. She folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer, not to forget, but to remember how far she'd come. Later, she met Daniel at a new wine bar downtown. The place was warm, candlelit, and buzzing with quiet energy. You okay? He asked as she settled into her seat beside him. She nodded. I met Mark today. Daniel didn't flinch. How did it go? Better than I expected. There was no blame. Just truth. Daniel gently touched her hand. Closure? She smiled. Yeah. It feels like I finally took off a backpack I didn't realize I'd been carrying. He leaned in. I want to make something clear, Emily. I'm not here to replace anything. I just want to be someone who adds. Her heart thudded softly. That's exactly what you are. They toasted their wine. To growth, she said. To us, he added. Over the next few weeks, Emily continued to build her life, not around someone else, but for herself. She pitched a short memoir-style column idea to a local lifestyle magazine. The editor loved it. We don't just want your story, she said. We want your voice. She volunteered at a creative writing workshop for women going through transitions, divorce, grief, career shifts. It wasn't therapy, but it was healing. In helping others tell their truth, she found her own echoing back. One evening after the workshop, she told Daniel, I never realized how much I needed to create. Not for money. Just to express. I feel alive again. He wrapped his arm around her. That's the woman I always saw, strong, creative, fierce. She smiled. I think I'm finally seeing her too. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were hard days. Moments of insecurity. Shadows from the past that crept in. But unlike before, Emily no longer ran from those moments. She faced them. She wrote them down. And with Daniel beside her, not as a savior, but as a partner, she moved forward with a full heart and open hands. Chapter 10: The New Beginning. A soft rain fell outside, drumming gently on the windowpane of Emily's apartment. She sat at her desk, sipping tea, her laptop open to a blank document. The cursor blinked steadily, like a heartbeat, waiting patiently for her to begin. But this time, she wasn't writing for someone else. Not for a job, not for approval. She was writing her own story. The title came first. Second Chances? She smiled. It wasn't just about romance. It was about the chance to be whole, to rediscover herself, and to love again, with eyes wide open. Weeks passed. Emily's column launched and quickly gained traction. Readers connected with her voice, vulnerable, honest, unfiltered. Emails began pouring in. Women who had walked away from bad marriages. Men who had rebuilt after infidelity. People who felt seen for the first time in years. One reader wrote, "Thank you for writing what I couldn't say out loud. You made me feel less alone." That sentence alone was worth every page. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Emily stood on the back patio of a small bookstore. A Meet the Columnist event had been arranged. There were maybe 30 people, modest, but to her, it felt huge. She read an excerpt aloud from her latest piece, about letting go of shame and reclaiming identity. Daniel stood near the back, his arms folded, pride glowing on his face. After the reading, he found her near the coffee table, still surrounded by compliments. "You blew them away," he said, kissing her cheek. She laughed softly. "I was so nervous I almost bailed. But you didn't. You showed up." Her eyes locked with his. "Like you always do." That evening, they went for a walk along the riverside park. Lanterns lit the paths. The water shimmered, quiet and steady. "I've been thinking," Daniel said, slipping his hand into hers. "I don't want to rush anything. But I also don't want to waste time. I love you, Emily. I've loved you through the mess, the guilt, the rediscovery. And I want to keep loving you through everything ahead." Emily's breath caught. "I don't need a perfect relationship," he continued. "I just need a real one. With you." She stopped walking, turned to him. "I love you too, Daniel. I never expected this. Never planned for it. But I choose you. Not out of escape or weakness, out of strength. Because with you, I don't lose myself. I find more of who I am." He reached into his coat pocket, not a ring, not a grand gesture, just a simple key. "To my place," he said. "No pressure. No expectations. Just, if you're ready to share more of this life with me." Emily took it, held it tight. It wasn't about moving in. It was a symbol. Of trust. Of healing. Of home. A few months later, Emily submitted a book proposal based on her column. The publisher greenlit it. She cried when she got the call, not because of the deal, but because for the first time, she believed in her own voice. She and Daniel traveled together, small trips at first. Coastal drives, mountain cabins, writing retreats. Each place added a layer to their story. There were tough conversations too. About guilt. Boundaries. Trust. But they had them, without blame, without hiding. One night, while sitting under a blanket of stars, Daniel turned to her and said, "Do you ever miss the past?" She paused, thoughtful. "I miss who I thought I had to be," she said. "But I'm grateful I finally became who I was meant to be." He kissed her forehead. "That's the woman I fell in love with." In the spring, Emily walked past the old office building where she used to work. The place where the affair began. It looked smaller now. Less charged. She didn't stop. She didn't need to. She just kept walking forward. Epilogue, 1 year later. The book launch was modest but beautiful. Second Chances, A story of love, loss, and becoming. Debuted in local stores, then found its way onto national lists. Daniel stood beside her, not in the spotlight, but always in her light. Mark sent her a letter, simple and kind. I read your book. I'm proud of you. Thank you for being brave enough to share the story that many of us live but few admit. Emily kept it tucked between the first pages of her personal copy. Not as a scar. As a reminder. That healing is messy. That mistakes don't define you. That love, real love, starts when you finally choose yourself. The end.